This Miami Heat did in this series and this entire postseason. And here with the first take, the man from First Take is Stephen A. Smith.
What's that?
If you see the smile on his face, that is because this was an unexpected, delightful outcome for you, was it not, Stephen?
Yeah, I would say so. Miami showed up in Game 7. I thought that they, emptied the chamber per se in Game 6. I didn't know if they'd have anything left. Obviously, they were helped immensely by the fact that Jason Tatum got hurt on the first offensive play of the game. He is the superstar for the Boston Celtics. He's a guy that's known to show up in Game 7s and elimination games, and certainly he was compromised in that regard. But in the end, we end up in South Beach. I hope no one expects me to have a problem with that.
No, I most certainly don't, knowing you as we do. Okay, but let's go into this, because in order to take that punch that the Heat took the other night and bounce back 2 days later on the road, that shows you an intestinal fortitude, a grit, and sort of a professional basketball courage that feels a little bit like the opposite of what the Celtics have now shown us repeatedly. Their ability to give away leads late in games. They lose Game 6 of this series last year on their home floor. Have to go to Miami. Almost give away an enormous lead in Game 7 of that one. They give away at home this year. Game 5 against Atlanta, no reason. Games 1 and 5 against Philly. The first 2 games of this series, and then the no-show in Game 3. What do we say about the Celtics today?
They're an incredibly talented team, but certainly there's something lacking. They turned the ball over a lot. Let's get that out of the way first. They're very sloppy. They were averaging like 15 turnovers a game in the 4 losses that they had. They averaged 5 less than the 3 wins that they had in this series. To lose 3 of your 4 games on your home court in a conference finals series, that's just abysmal. When you consider the fact that they were basically a 500 team at home over the last 2 postseasons, that's certainly something that's inexcusable, particularly with a talent like this. But the reality of the situation is, when you look at their talent, top to bottom, this is an elite team in the game of basketball, but Miami had a little something extra when it counted. You could point to Jimmy Butler. I would point to Caleb Martin and the reserves, the undrafted players, rather, coming into the game, into this series, and doing the kind of things that they're doing. I would point to all of that and ask, where were the Boston Celtics when it really, really counted, particularly when Jason Tatum went down? Jaylen Brown, I don't think I've ever seen him play a worse game than he played last night. He was really, really bad, and we know what a good player he is, but he was really, really bad, and no one else seemed capable of stepping up. They were frozen, and that was definitely uncharacteristic of what we're accustomed to seeing from the Boston Celtics, particularly considering the fact they were in the finals last year. This is not new to them. This was Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, like 5th conference finals. They were in the NBA finals last year. You're not expecting or anticipating these guys, which was pretty much the same team last year with the exception of the acquisition of Malcolm Brogdon. You certainly expected a lot from the Boston Celtics. You didn't get it, and now you've got to look at them. You've got to look at them a little differently.
There is one other big difference, as you obviously know, and that is that Ime Udoka was their coach last year, and he took them to the final, and Alan Hahn said this morning here on this show that he believes, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's sitting right over there, so nod your head at me if I'm saying this wrong or something. He believes that the difference this year was that they had Udoka last year and he got them there, and the difference this year was that they didn't have him on their bench.
Well, listen, that's hard to say. I would agree with Alan completely if the Boston Celtics hadn't come back from an 0-3 deficit and tied at 3-3 and forced the Game 7. We certainly were in no position to say that once the series was notched 3-3. What I would tell you is this. Last year, we saw Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown when they made mistakes, when they were a bit sloppy with the basketball, when they weren't doing what they were supposed to do. We saw Ime Udoka walk on the court and confront them and get in their face and hold them accountable. We didn't see that with Mazzulla. I'm not saying that he didn't talk to them, he didn't, cajole them, he didn't get on them or anything like that. I'm saying we didn't see it. And so when you look at the kind of mistakes that they were making, the fact that they come out there and they missed their first 10 shots, for crying out loud, they're horrid from 3-point range, and they kept jacking up 3-point shots, didn't take the ball to the rack, didn't go to the hole, didn't make things happen with the players around them. That's certainly something you could look at Coach Mazzulla about and say, wait a minute, that could have been better. But we all knew coming into this season, as good as he may end up being, he was no Ime Udoka. Ime Udoka, as far as I'm concerned, I don't approve of how the Boston Celtics have handled that situation, and we all know that. And I think that ultimately this came back to haunt them in the end, because I don't think the mistakes that you saw would have happened with Udoka.
He's no Ime Udoka, and he's certainly no Eric Spoelstra.
Not yet.
Or certainly no Eric Spoelstra, who continues to prove himself over and over again. And that begets a huge question in Boston. Yep. Because Jason Tatum's an outstanding player, and Jaylen Brown is an outstanding player. And they may like each other a lot as people. What I'm about to say is I'm not trying to read anything into their relationship. I don't know anything about their relationship. But I know enough about sports to know they don't make each other better. They don't have chemistry. If you and I do a good show together, it's because I make you better and you make me better. If we don't have chemistry, then I'm just me and you're just you. Right. That's what they look like to me. So the question is, do you give him $59 million a year to keep him in?
Jaylen Brown?
Yes.
No. I don't think you give. First of all, I don't think you give him that much, period, because he's not your number one option. That kind of money is reserved for number one.
So then, what he says to you? Either give it to me or I want out.
Well, excuse me. I mean, there's a guy by the name of Damian Lillard in Portland. I wouldn't mind getting somebody like him, who's a closer, by the way, who's a point guard as a closer, who's a sniper. We got all of that stuff going for ourselves. If you're Damian Lillard, obviously he's older than Jaylen Brown, but Jaylen Brown, I think the real challenge is that he has aspirations for being that number one guy, and that is never going to happen with Jason Tatum. So the question is, can he accept being 1A? And I think we've seen enough evidence over the course of the last couple of years where we see that's at least a challenge for him. Last night certainly didn't help his cause or his case, and maybe that would throw some humility in the situation. Not saying he's lacking it, but maybe that would throw more humility in the situation where he's saying, wait a minute, I might be better off being right here and just growing with these guys and knowing my position, because I ain't Jason Tatum. But if he feels adamant that that's not the case and he needs to move on, then you need to think about an abundance of parts that you could get potentially for Jaylen Brown, because he is a star in this league and he is young. He is younger. Either you get an abundance of players, which I don't think is necessary, or you get a superstar caliber sniper like Damian Lillard to come to Boston in return for his services. If I'm the Boston Celtics, I'm looking at something along those lines rather than giving him $59 million, which is more than Damian Lillard is making at this moment.
It's more than anybody is making, and of course that's going to change. It's the new, the new deals are going to come into place. Other guys are going to keep topping it, but the reality is to keep both of them is going to cost them $600 million.
They can't do that.
Well, so that's the thing. So maybe we see the end of that. Let me get a quick take from you on Nick Nurse. He's now the new coach in Philadelphia. What does that mean for the futures of James Harden as far as where he plays, and Joel Embiid as far as, is this the right coach for him to finally win a championship?
Well, I don't think it's the wrong coach. Nick Nurse is a champion. He's proven that, even though I thought he benefited tremendously so from the fact that his first year coaching the Toronto Raptors, they had Kawhi Leonard, and obviously LeBron James was outside of the Eastern Conference. But nevertheless, a championship is a championship. You can't take that away from the man. The man knows how to coach. I don't think that it affects Joel Embiid in a negative way.